What is going on, people? Back for another review. If you couldn't tell by the title, it's of a movie called Hush. And as much as I would love to hold the movie up right here, I cannot because the only way you can watch this is on Netflix. It is a Netflix exclusive. Um, and that's, pretty much the only reason I got Netflix. So, Mr. Mike Flanagan, Netflix should thank you because they gained a subscriber. I guess you would call it a subscriber. Or I did sign up to Netflix because of Hush. Among, there's other movies that I've heard in the horror community that you should check out on Netflix. But for the most part, I've heard a lot about this movie. I definitely wanted to check it out. So that's pretty much why I got Netflix. So let me get into it. It's written and directed by Mike Flanagan, as well as written by Kate Siegel, who actually plays Maddie, the main character in this movie. Also stars John Gallagher Jr., Michael Trucco, among many others. Pretty much what this movie is about is you got your writer, I guess you want to call it, a book writer. She ends up going into a secluded area, this house with no pretty much human interaction, to write her book. She's finding trouble to write it and everything. So she ends up, going here to, I guess, find time or find inspiration to write the book. You know, you've seen movies like this before, but it's a little different because she is deaf. She's a deaf mute. She ends up contracting. I forget what the disease was, but when she was younger, she ended up becoming deaf and mute. So pretty much she kind of felt secluded anyway. So this just kind of made it a little bit easier, I guess you want to call it. So she ends up trying to write a book. The only really human interaction that she does have is her friend, who periodically stops over, and she FaceTimes with a whole bunch of people, including her sister and other stuff. But pretty much she's by herself in this, house. One day her friend ends up coming over to talk about a book and everything and telling her, she's learning sign language and everything. And pretty much they shoot the breeze and everything. The girl has to leave, and she invites her over to watch a movie or hang out with her and her husband or whatever. And she says, "No, listen, I gotta finish this book and everything." So she ends up going in her house trying to figure out how to finish it. That's the one part of the story that she can't finish, and pretty much, she's going back and forth. At one point later in the night, she's in her kitchen doing whatever, and all of a sudden you see the friend come by, starting banging on the window, asking for help, asking her to come in and everything, but she can't hear it because again she's deaf. So she's banging, the friend's banging on the window, and all of a sudden you see this arrow come shooting through, this guy climbing up the stairs, and then pretty much kills her friend. No spoiler alert, because that happens within the first 10-15 minutes of the movie. Let me say, with this movie, I must say, it's not gory per se, but it's got the right amount of blood where it makes it, squeamish, I guess you want to call it. There are scenes where you're like, ooh, and it got me very, intrigued and everything. Not the goriest thing I've ever seen, but again, perfect placement of blood and sound effects, I guess you want to call it. So it definitely hit its mark. So again, this guy comes up the stairs, starts killing this girl, and then notices Maddie in the window. So he's trying to get her attention and whatever, and then I guess finally figures out, if not that part, later on, a little, not a huge amount of time, but time passes. She ends up going on her computer, starts talking to her sister through FaceTime, and then the sister mentions that she saw something in the background, and then she says, "Oh, it's probably my cat." And then she notices on the computer that she's getting messages from this friend. So she opens up I guess she's getting picture messages from this girl's phone. And she figures out that, something's going on because someone's taking pictures of her through the window and all this stuff. And she ends up, the last picture is of her from an angle from outside of her sitting on the computer looking all strange, pretty much the picture was taken a little while ago. So she ends up walking over to the back door and noticing this guy just standing there. She ends up locking it, and then pretty much the rest of the movie is this guy trying to get in, to pretty much kill this girl. The only problem, I guess, it's not really a big thing. At one point, he was in the house, like behind her, like stalking, like very stalkingly, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then he ends up back outside the house. The only thing is, in my head, I would have thought that if he did get in the house and decide to go back outside, he might have like booby trapped something that, he would be able to just walk back in at any given point. But again, I'm not nitpicking. It's not the biggest deal. So anyway, the rest of the movie is pretty much her trying to stay alive. Again, she's got a major disadvantage because she is deaf. Again, like I said, the blood in this movie is really cool. There's certain scenes where people get injured, and it's just the sounds and the sights and the blood and everything definitely make the scene that much cooler. The other cool thing that I thought about this movie that I thought was really cool is certain parts. At first, you hear her talking to herself, trying to write the movie, and then write the book, and then later on, there's a scene where she's pretty much talking to herself, like in her mind, but she's looking in a mirror, and it's like her talking to herself kind of deal, like her subconscious, I guess you want to call it, going through scenarios to get out of here or like die alone because she got injured or stuff like that. It's pretty cool that she's talking to herself, but you see her talk. Like, you have to watch it to understand it. But overall, I must say, I don't want to get into anything else in the movie, but overall, I must say that if you're into those intruder movies, if you're into the survival type movies, this one is definitely for you. Again, I'd probably, if I could, I'd own it on a format, Blu-ray or whatever, but again, it's on Netflix. So if you do have Netflix and you were wondering if you were on the fence, definitely go ahead, check out this movie. If you want to check it out, go ahead. I mean, the worst you can do is probably sign up for that free month and then maybe cancel it after that, but definitely a movie I'd say go ahead and check out. I'll leave all the links, well, not really links, because the only way, again, you can check it out is Netflix, but I'll leave the information and whatever in the notes. Again, hopefully you enjoyed my review. If you did, definitely give me a thumbs up. If it's your first time joining, or if you joined before and you haven't already, definitely go ahead, subscribe. I do have an Instagram for my movies, so if there's anyone that go ahead, check it out. I'll leave the link, the information about that. If you want to, check that out. And if there's a movie on there that you do want reviewed, definitely let me know and I'll go ahead and review it for you. So again, check out Hush on Netflix. And until next time, I'll see you.